And interestingly enough, I only live like 2 blocks away. And so like I often walk my dog past this church all the time as I go walk in the property here in the back. So yeah, it's so funny that for the last 4 years I just walk by, and then I got a call and I'm like, I will absolutely come to a program at your church. So I'm thrilled to be here today. And so what I'm in charge of at the zoo is actually all of our education programs, but also our conservation programs. Now, who knows what the word conservation means? What does that mean? To conserve something means what? I'm asking some of the younger audience. Do you guys know what conserve means? If I were to conserve electricity, I might do that. What am I doing if I'm conserving electricity? I'm saving it, right? So if I turn off the lights, I'm going to save electricity. That's why, like in our house, like if you're not in a room, should the lights be on if you're not in that room? No, so you should turn the lights off and you will conserve electricity, right? So if I were to conserve animals, what am I trying to do for animals? Trying to save them, right? Oh, like this one right here. What animal is this? What? You sure that's not a donkey? I mean, like, look at the big ears. Donkey, right?
Donkeys don't have horns.
Oh, you got me on that one. That's right. The little ossicones, that totally gives it away. But yeah, the giraffes are actually in big trouble, right? Like a lot of people think because a lot of zoos have giraffes that giraffes are totally fine. But just a few years ago, we actually discovered that there are 4 different species of giraffes. They used to think they were all together, right? And we learned that there's 4 different species, which actually means that all of them, almost all of them, are now endangered, right? What does endangered mean? What do you think?
Means they're going extinct.
They're going extinct. And if they go extinct, what does that mean?
There's going to be no more giraffes.
No more giraffes. All gone. You see this one down here? What's that animal?
Snow leopard.
You are absolutely right. It is a snow leopard. And I do like how your shirt actually matches that snow leopard. So thank you for dressing the color coordinated. But the snow leopard is another animal that is vulnerable to extinction, right? And so at Niamey Zoo, we work with conservation partners like the Snow Leopard Trust to help save these animals in the wild. Because while I myself would love to travel to the Himalayan mountains over in Asia to help save those, I kind of can't do that all the time. So we actually work with partners who are there in the field, and they work with local communities to help save those animals there. So we support their efforts, and they help save those animals in the wild. Now, of course, at the zoo, knowing that these animals are vulnerable to extinction, we also work to try to repopulate them. Now, repopulate means to make more of them, right? Just like we were talking about the white rhino that we have at our zoo now. He will be getting a girlfriend next year, and we hope that they will have babies because we're trying to help repopulate that species, which means to make more of them, right? So if there aren't that many in the wild, it's left to us to try to help make more, right? I don't know if you guys heard that this summer we got an Amer Leopard, right? A female Amer Leopard. Now, we've had a male Amer Leopard for a while, but the first time for us to get a female was very exciting. And of course, because of COVID, she had to wait in England for over a year before she could come to us, right? And so she finally got here, so we're so excited. And that is the most critically endangered cat in the entire world. And we have that right at the zoo. We also have, that's the Amer Leopard.
So it's
Yeah.
brownish.
It looks like a regular leopard, right? With the yellowish with the black spot, spots, the rings. But they actually don't come from Africa like the African leopards. They come from the Amer River Valley, which is northern China, southern Mongolia, some of that area there. So that's a really, really important thing for us to be doing at the zoo. Now, speaking of COVID, we can't bring live animals out into the community. So we decided to bring some preserved animals here today. So we won't get to see too many live things today, actually no live things today. But that's probably okay because some of you might be a little nervous about things like spineless wonders. So when I say spineless wonders, what do I mean by spine? What's a spine? Who knows what a spine is? What's a spine?
It's something pokey.
Ooh, that's true. It is something pokey. So things like cactuses have spines, right? So it can mean something pokey. But there's another kind of spine that I'm thinking of that helps us walk upright like this. What kind of spine am I talking about?
It's like your back.
your backbone. Everybody take your finger like this, and if you can reach around to your back, point to your spine right there, right? And it goes from all the way down here, all the way up to there, right? And so your spine is your backbone. Now, how many, do you guys know what percentages are? If I say there's 100% of something, what does that mean? All of it, right? If I say 50% of it, what does that mean? Half of it, right? Okay, so I want you to think of all the animals in the entire world. What percentage do you think has a backbone? What do you think? Do you think half of all the animals in the world have a backbone? Do you think all of the animals in the world have a backbone?
Half.
You think half, so maybe 50%? What do you think?
82.
You think 82% of all animals in the world have a backbone? Okay, what do you think?
75.
Did you say 75? Yeah, okay. Grown-ups? I will take grown-up input on this as well. 25%? Okay. Do I hear more? Do I hear more? Do I hear more? 25, 25, going once, going twice. Anything higher or lower? What do you think?
Higher.
You think it's higher than 25%? Grown-ups, what do you think? You think 40? Anyone else? There's a prize in the end. Anybody? Go lower. Lower than 25%. 10%?
15.
Go lower.
5.
5%?
13.
Go lower.
1.
2%? Okay, just a little higher.
3.
3% of all animals in the world actually have a backbone. And most people don't think of that, because you think animal, what do you think of? You think of mammals, you think of birds, you think of reptiles, you think of fish, amphibians, right? All of which have backbones. But we miss the bulk of the animals on this planet, which have no backbones at all. We call them invertebrates, because a vertebrae, right, is one of your backbones, and a vertebrate is an animal with a backbone. Invertebrates are animals without a backbone. 97% of all animals on Earth are spineless wonders. They have no backbone at all. And we, as humans, we often overlook that, which means we overlook most of the animals on Earth, right? In fact, I don't think most people even think that insects or crabs or things, they don't even think about them necessarily being animals, they just call them bugs. And most people just want to like do away with bugs. But there's a real problem with that. Bugs literally make all of our ecosystems go round, right? So bugs make the world go round, right? I mean, they really do. All of our ecosystems are dependent on the invertebrates, right? So when we think about the interactions between animals and their environment, insects and their relatives are very important in that. You guys, what is this thing?
Wasp Nest.
It is wasp nest. Does anyone know what kind of wasp nest? Yeah, because this stuff here, it's kind of like paper, right? So they actually make this with their mouth. They chew up stuff and they blend it together with their spit. And then they're like, blah, 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 they all put it together and boom, they make themselves a house. How many guys would love to make a house with just like your spit? I mean, whoo, that'd be amazing, right? But interestingly enough, I mean, this little house holds up very well against the weather. Now this one's, you know, kind of a little squash, but it fell out of a tree and we collected it. And I promise there's no wasps in here right now. So that's good, right? So they're very industrious, right? They can build things. Let's see. Ooh, speaking of building things, what is this?
Coral?
It is coral. Let me kind of walk back here and move all these tiny little chairs out of the way because there's nobody sitting in them. But if you guys would like to touch this, just feel this. So it's soft or hard, and I want you to look really, really close and to look at the tiny, tiny little holes that you see all over this.
It's hard.
It looks like a tiny little pin has put all these tiny little holes in it, right? What do you think all those holes are for?
Eggs.
Not necessarily eggs. That's a good guess, though. What do you think?
Food.
Food, not specifically food. I heard another one. Animals. Yeah. Those tiny little holes that you see right there, every tiny little hole has an animal that lived in it. That is where coral lives. Now, when we think of coral and coral reefs and things like that, we often think of it as a much larger organism, but it's actually a colony of tiny, tiny, tiny organisms that make up the huge things, right? So this thing here, that's really hard, right? You touch that, that's pretty hard. So these guys actually secrete calcium carbonate, which is a tiny little amount of material that then hardens into this little structure, right? So this could have thousands and thousands of little corals on it, just this. Then imagine a reef. Reefs have millions and millions. And like a barrier reef, like the Great Barrier Reef, has trillions and trillions, and probably a number that I can't even make up, because they are so important in building those reef systems around the world. Now, the crazy thing about that is that coral reefs in the ocean are as important as rainforests on the land. Now, why do you think rainforests on the land are important? What's in rainforests? The trees. What else? Animals. There, in fact, is 90% of all of the animals on the land actually live in rainforests. That seems crazy because there's animals around here, but there's so many more that live in a rainforest. So all those plants, all of those animals that live in a rainforest, super important for the animals and plants on land. In the ocean, it's the coral reefs that have most of the animals and organisms, right, that live on it, and so they are super important. But you want to know something sad? Almost 2/3 of all, that's 67%, if anyone keeping track of percentages, of coral reefs are dying out. In fact, 50% of the world's coral reefs are already dead, which means that all of the animals that depend on the reefs for living are without a home, right? And so that is very scary. That's because the temperatures of our oceans are going up, and there's pollution in the oceans and plastics in the oceans and all of that, and that makes it very hard for animals to survive in the ocean, and all of those other animals that live in the ocean, like this little guy. What is this? You are correct, sir. That is an octopus, right? Now, it's a very small octopus, but this is actually a baby of the world's largest octopus, which is the giant Pacific octopus. If the giant Pacific octopus was right here next to me, its head would be about this big, and if its legs all were hanging down, it would be about as tall as I am, the octopus. That's a pretty big octopus. Now, here's the even crazier thing. You guys see this? What does that sort of look like? Any ideas? Excuse me. It looks like a beak, doesn't it? Like a bird beak. Do you see that? And if you stuck your finger in there, do you think it would poke you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. This little beak does not come from a bird like a parrot. It actually comes from a giant squid. So giant squids are super squishy. They don't have a backbone, but they do have one hard part in their whole body. This is it, the beak, right? Now, here's the weird thing. The giant squid is the largest invertebrate to ever have existed on this planet, right? It could be over 50 feet long. So you guys, you see this wall right here? Do you see that wall way back there? It would be as long as that. If a giant squid were laying in here with his head up here and his tentacles all laying back there, that's at least how long he would be, is as long as this building. And he would have a much bigger beak than that if he were that big. But this is super important. Because do you think he could catch fish with this?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. And he can easily eat those fish with this beak, right? So things like the ocean, they have amazing creatures in them. And when we think about what's in the ocean and where in the ocean, the bottom of the ocean is pretty outstanding, because a lot of people think because it's really cold down there, it's really dark down there, they think that nothing can really live down there. But what we have discovered, because like I'm a scuba diver, right? So as a scuba diver, I dive in the ocean and I learn about the animals that are there. In fact, I actually do whale shark research. Do you guys know what whale sharks are? What is whale shark?
It's a
First, is it a shark or is it a whale?
it's both, but its mouth is so big.
Its mouth is about this big, yeah? And it opens pretty wide, right? What do you think?
A whale shark is a shark, and it's the biggest shark.
It is the biggest shark. It's the biggest fish in the world. It grows to about 40 feet long, which is about not as long as this room, easily half as long as this room, probably about 2/3 as long as this room is how big whale sharks can get, right? Now, they filter feed, which is just like how a whale eats. That's why they call them the whale shark. Because most of the time when we think about sharks, do we think about them eating tiny little bits of plankton? No, usually sharks eat other fish, right? So they have pointy teeth and all of that. The whale shark doesn't have any of that. He filter feeds. All of the largest animals that have ever lived on Earth have always eaten either plants or really small things like plankton, right? Plankton lives on the ocean surface, and there's lots of tiny little microscopic animals that are in plankton too. So it's the animal that eats the animals that eat the smallest animals actually end up becoming the largest animals. We think of the blue whale. The blue whale is 90 feet long. It's more than twice as long as this room, right? 90 feet long, and that also only eats tiny little microscopic plankton, right? Now that's on the surface. Down at the bottom of the ocean, do you think there's a lot of things that live down at the bottom of the ocean where it's cold and dark?
Yeah.
No sunlight can ever get down there? Yes, you are correct. There are lots of things that live on the bottom of the ocean. I'm going to share something with you that very few people get to see. This animal, lives 3 miles below the surface of the ocean. It lives in complete and total darkness. It's pretty darn cold down there. He's actually quite large. And it's like my little baby. Look at this baby. Right? Now that's the backside. This is what he looks like on the other side.
Is it a sand crab?
Oh, well, you know, that's a good question. Is it a sand crab? It's not a crab, but it is related to crabs, right? This is called a deep sea isopod. Now, here's the funny thing. Isopods live in your backyard. You've never seen one of these crawling across your backyard, right? Chasing down your dog? Nothing like that? You ever just climb up your leg? No one's ever had that happen? Whew, I'm glad, because yeah, that would be pretty scary, wouldn't it? The one I'm talking about in your backyard? The roly-poly, the pill bugs, right? The tiny little pill bugs, the roly-polies that roll up in tiny little balls when you touch them. That is this thing's cousin. Yeah, but this one doesn't live under the ground or on top of the ground. It lives at the bottom of the ocean. Now, if you guys look back here, it has these little things. They almost look like little flippers or fins. And then it has this, which actually fans out, and then it propels like this, kind of like how a shrimp's tail looks. When a shrimp fans its tail out, it can paddle sort of like that. And of course, it spends most of its time actually on the bottom of the ocean, crawling around with all of these little legs. Now I'm gonna bring it a little closer. I want you to look at his face. He has actually some big eyes here and here. He has an antenna that comes down here and here, and he has a mouth which kind of closes this way, right? I'm just gonna look real close. He might also have a slightly funny smell. I apologize for that. Look at that. That's pretty crazy, isn't it? Oh, and if you want, you can touch him on the back. Now, when we got him about a year ago. He had lived in an aquarium, and you know, like we are a zoo, there's also aquariums, right? And so it had passed away there, and unfortunately, you know, it died, but we didn't want to waste that, so we actually dried him out. So you guys know, like sometimes when you get packages in the mail, you know, or things shipped to you, that there are those tiny little beads, right? The little packet of silicone beads that you get. Well, those little tiny silicone beads help to keep things dry, right? So we bought 10 pounds of those beads and stuck this guy in it, and in about 3 months, he totally dried out, right? So that we could preserve him and take him around to teach you guys about things that live on the bottom of the ocean. And even though, like, some people, you know, they look at him and they're like, ugh, I think he is just amazing, you know, because we are able to see something that we would never be able to see otherwise, because I don't know about you, but when's the last time you went to the bottom of the ocean? Anytime soon? Yeah, so, you know, we're able to bring, you know, these beautiful things from the deep to learn more about them. You know, we don't do it to take them just to keep them, but it's for education, right? Because the animals that we work with, it's really all about what we can learn from them, right? Now you guys may have seen things like this, right? And I don't really know how to like go, you know, because I have a mask on. It's like really hard to do. But you may have heard people blow into conch shells or say, oh, I can hear the ocean, right? But do you guys know what a conch actually is? Is it the shell? What do you think? Do you think something lives inside there?
Yes.
Absolutely. It's like a giant snail or a slug, as you mentioned, right? Like a sea snail. And it has like, it hooks itself all the way in there and it spirals around. And then he comes out and, you know, he crawls around kind of like this and he pokes out like this and he eats the detritus or all the little dead stuff that falls to the bottom of the ocean floor. He eats all that stuff, right? But he makes this just beautiful and amazing hard shell. Now, of course, we think the shell's job is, what does it do? It protects it. It's his home, right? And so it keeps him safe from other animals that might want to eat him, right? Now, so that's the cool stuff that happens in the ocean. Let's talk a little bit real quick about what happens on the land. So let's see, have you guys ever seen one of these guys? You are absolutely correct. That is a cicada. Yep. So cicadas are amazing creatures. They are the sound of summer, whether we like it or not. We're like, oh, my ears, because that really high pitch, that horrible noise that we hear during the summer sometimes. That's, of course, the cicada. Now, there are also very special cicadas that are out there that actually stay underground for 13 to 17 years before they ever emerge and then take on this form with the big wings, right? And so, you know, I think that is like so special. Because think about that for a second. It's kind of like being a person, right? How old are you guys?
4 and he's 6.
6? How old are you?
16.
How old are you?
9.
And how old are you?
16.
Yeah, so and how old are you?
I'm 10.
And you? How old are you?
5.
5. Okay, so we've got a wide variety of ages. Now, are all of you grown up?
Yes.
You're grown up right now? It's like, I'm a grown up. I'm going to start driving next week. I got to take care of all the bills. I'll, you know, buy me a house, all that. But even at 16, I mean, you look almost grown up. But are you fully grown up yet?
No.
You got a few more years to go, right? But you're almost there. Oh, you're so close. You're like, I just want to grow up. And then, of course, once we do grow up, we're like, oh, I just want to be younger. So it's a weird dilemma there. But the thing is, like us, it takes about 17 years for us to get to adulthood, right? Cicadas, same thing, right? So when we think about insects, we're like, oh, we don't have anything in common with them. We kind of do, especially with their life cycle, right? So it takes all that time to develop and learn and you know, grow to the size that you're going to get to. And then you go through a transformative process in which you develop wings and you soar through life. And you very poetic, right? But that's what I think of when I think of cicadas, right? So when I hear that sound, yes, the sound may be a little bit annoying, but at the same time, when I hear that sound, I'm like, wow, that's like the sound of success, right? It's the sound of growth and development. And nature does incredible things that, you know, we just don't really think about. So, what is this?
Caterpillar.
There's tiny little caterpillars. What are these little yellow dots right there on that leaf? What do you think those are?
Eggs.
Those are eggs, right? So this is a fake thing. It's a fake leaf, right? But that little caterpillar grows up to be a big caterpillar, right? Does anyone know what kind of caterpillar this is? What do you think? From what do you think it's going to become? You are correct. This is a monarch caterpillar, and it's very, very distinguishable. You guys, what do you think all of those yellow and white lines on its black body tell other animals? What do you think?
To stay back.
Why? Why should you stay back with something that has like white and yellow stripes?
Because it might be poisonous.
You are correct. Now, can you guys think of any other animals that might have like yellow stripes or something on their body that maybe you should stay away from? What do you think? What do you think?
A frog.
Well, yeah, frogs. Frogs can be bright colors and stuff. What about that lives around here, things with stripes on them? What do you think? Like yellow stripes on a black body.
Wasp.
wasps or bees, right? So why do bees and wasps like yellow jackets, right? Why do they have a similar pattern like this? Because if we get too close to them, what could they do to us?
Sting us?
They could sting us, right? Now this one, do you think this is going to sting us?
No.
No, but do you think if wild animals eat this, that something bad might happen to them?
Yeah.
Because you said they could get poisoned or at least, get really sick. Like we've seen blue jays, that young blue jays will like go and eat these, and then the blue jays will go like, whoa, and then start throwing up, and the blue jay's like, oh, I don't know what just happened, but I am never eating that again. Adults, have you ever felt like that in any sort of situation? I don't know. But that's the thing. It's like that bird learned that, I cannot eat something like that. He will learn from that, right? And those are called warning colors, right? And now bees, just real quick sidebar, has anyone heard about what's happened with the bees over at the zoo? Any ideas? We have more of them, which is actually pretty amazing, because when I got here in 2017, that's when I moved here to Coal Valley, we didn't have a lot of bees at the zoo or here in the Quad Cities in general. In fact, one bee was actually listed as endangered in 2017. It's called the rusty patch bumblebee, right? And because it was listed as endangered, we're like, well, how do we help this bee out? Because bumblebees are super duper important. Why do you think that is? What do they help us do?
They make honey.
Some bees do make honey. Those are usually called honeybees.
And they make your garden grow.
That's true. That's the one right there. They make your garden grow. They help to pollinate plants. And they help those plants produce fruits and vegetables and all of those things. Do you guys like fruits and vegetables? Even if your parents make you eat them? Yeah, I mean, I love fruits and vegetables. And we can thank things like these animals right here, right? Because when they go into this, what is this called?
Cocoon.
It is called a cocoon, but this one is specifically called something a little bit different. What do you think? It does start with a C, just like cocoon. Chrysalis. Everyone say chrysalis. Isn't it much more beautiful word? Cocoon, you're like cocoon, right? And when I say chrysalis, I'm like chrysalis. I don't know, it's just like this thing. Now, if I had a real chrysalis here, this is obviously artificial, but if you had the real one here, it is incredible. That little black line is usually actually gold, and there are usually 3 dots of gold right down here, and I'm telling you, it looks as shiny as gold. And I don't know how it happens. I don't know why it happens. It serves no specific purpose. Scientists are totally confused why chrysalises are so beautiful with that shiny band of gold and those little dots of gold that literally look metallic. We have no idea, because the butterfly doesn't look that way. The caterpillar doesn't look that way. We have no reason or understanding as to why those shiny bits are on the beautiful chrysalis, right? But of course, once they hatch, they emerge into a beautiful butterfly, which of course is the monarch. Now we see the orange and black, and that's a really bright, beautiful color, but is it still a warning color?
Yes.
Like the caterpillar?
Yes.
Do you think if birds eat this monarch butterfly, they'll probably still get sick?
Yes.
Yes. Do you want to know why that is? Do you know what these guys eat? Do you know what kind of plants these eat?
know.
What do you think?
Milkweed.
You are absolutely correct. It eats milkweed, right? Now, milkweed actually, do you think you should eat milkweed?
No.
No, you shouldn't. Even though the white stuff that comes out of it, you're like, ooh, milk, maybe I could drink that. No, we would probably poison ourselves, right? Because it's very toxic to other animals. But these guys get to eat it. All the other animals leave it alone, but they like to eat it. And when they emerge as a butterfly, they are fully poisonous to other animals, and they will make other animals sick if those animals eat them, right? And so these warning colors tell other animals, totally, you should leave me alone or you are going to get sick, right? So that's just also one of the cool things. Now, what about this butterfly? Look at how he shines when I turn him, right? Because if you look straight at him, he kind of looks a little dark, but when he catches the light, notice how iridescent he is. He shines like metal, right? So this is a type that is called a blue Morpho. There's a few different kinds of blue Morpho butterflies that are out there, but this one just happens to be so iridescent, right? And I just think that is just spectacular because it doesn't look real. It looks artificial. It looks like people made this, right? Yet, nature has all of these amazing things, right? Now, if you look at his sides, if you look on the underside of his wings, is he blue at all? No, in fact, he's like mottled brown, right? That's not even...
On the other side is the moth.
No, so if you look on the underside, why is he all brown and speckled and white? And why do you think he looks like that? Why isn't he bright blue on the underside too?
Camouflage.
Camouflage. So when its wings are folded up, it's hiding, right? And because usually that's when it's eating, right? So if it's eating, it has its long proboscis down into a flower and is sucking all the nectar out and stuff. Do you think that it wants everything to see it while it's eating?
No.
Because, I don't know about you, but like when I sit down and eat, I'm just like, blah, 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 blah. Are you like vulnerable when you eat? Could someone sneak up behind you and you not notice because you're just focused on your food? Yeah, like, you know, I'd be eating and somebody would be like, rah! And I'd be like, ah! Right? That would totally happen because you can't tell what's going on behind you. So they fold themselves up. They have all their camouflage on. But why do they have blue on top of their wings then? If they're all folded up while they're eating, when does the color show?
When it's flying.
When it's flying, right? So a lot of butterflies have some things that are going on the backs of their wings. Sometimes you see butterflies with big eye spots on the backs of their wings that look like animal eyes. And that is to distort and scare other animals, right? So if you're flapping like this and bright blue or bright yellow or bright orange is going back and forth, it actually messes with the eyes of predators. And predators are like, whoa, what is going on there? And of course, if they're flapping, they see those big eye spots on some of them. They'll be like, I don't want to mess with that. So all of that is to help protect the butterfly. It is so beautiful just to protect it. Okay, I have a couple last things to show you. Some people get kind of nervous around these things, but trust me, these are just exoskeletons. What is an exoskeleton?
A spider.
How many of you guys have a skeleton? Raise your hand if you have a skeleton. That lady back there doesn't have a skeleton. I'm sorry. She just goes through life like a slinky. She's just like, right? So, okay, so what is a skeleton? It's your what?
It's your bone.
It's your bones. But our bones are important because it allows us to walk around, pick stuff up, do these things, right? Now, with things like these animals here, do they have a skeleton on the inside?
Yes.
No, they don't. They're actually all squishy on the inside. So they actually have their skeleton on the outside. And that's what an exoskeleton is. Now you can see these two arachnids here. We have... That's correct. We have a tarantula and a scorpion. Now this tarantula is one of my favorites because it's one of my ambassador animals. So do you think this animal is alive?
No.
Actually it is. It lives at the zoo, right? This spider's name is actually Arana. But this is just like its old clothes, right? So were you ever as small as him?
Yes.
What happened to you?
I grew.
You grew, absolutely. Do you think you could wear his clothes?
No.
Do you think you could wear even her clothes? I mean, she's a little bit bigger. You couldn't squeeze into that? How come? Because she is so much bigger now, right? But it's easy for us to change our clothes. Do you think it's as easy for these guys to change their exoskeleton? No, once they grow, they're like, oh man, my exoskeleton is so tight. And I don't know if you've ever had like pants on that were like way too tight, but you got into them, you squeezed into them, you got them all buttoned up and everything. You're like, how am I ever going to get these things off, right? Sometimes we lay on our bed and we lay upside down and we try to like kick and we push those pants off to try and get them off. And you're like, I am never putting those back on again until the next time. But with spiders and things, that is exactly what they do, right? So if they have their exoskeleton becomes so tight, they actually, like you can see in here, there's like a trap door that's on what is called its cephalothorax. It's sticking up right here, and you can see that it covered the central part of the body. Now that little section opens up, and they flip over on their back, and then they kick this thing off of themselves, and you can see inside the center all the little holes where its legs would be, where its legs fit in there. And so they literally pull their legs out of of this exoskeleton just like you're pulling your legs out of a pair of pants, right? And then they kick it off, and then during that time, they are actually quite vulnerable because their bodies are very soft. They're usually white in color at the time until their new exoskeleton hardens up. And that takes about 24 hours for that to happen. So usually they kind of hide themselves for at least a day while they kick off their exoskeleton. And I'll tell you though, as their zookeepers, we get a little confused because we walk in and suddenly it looks like there's two spiders. And they're going, oh, how did you get in there? And they're like, oh, wait a minute, it just shed. And so I just think that is absolutely incredible to see inside its little exoskeleton, see where all of its legs pull out. And the fact that it comes off so perfectly. Like this scorpion, I mean, it looks exactly intact. Like I don't even know how scorpions easily get out. Now they split kind of on the underside and pull themselves out. So it's a little bit different than the process for spiders. But like you can still see its stinger, right? I mean, look there. Look at the tiny stinger. It's still on there. How did that not break off when it was pulling apart? It's amazing what these little animals do. But so I hope that you understand that in nature, all animals are so impressive because of so many different reasons. We may get nervous around these kinds of animals, but we should still respect these animals. They still have a place here on Earth. In fact, they have such a place here on Earth that if aliens were to come to planet Earth and say, you know, take me to those which have the greatest population on this planet, and that's what they would see as like the dominant individuals on the planet, they would probably, you know, someone should take them to ants, to be honest, because there are more types of ants on this earth than just about any other animal, right? And so we like to think that we're the dominant life on this planet, but we're absolutely not. It's the invertebrates. Every single day you walk around in your backyard, underneath your feet are thousands and thousands of invertebrates, right? Which we have to say thank you, invertebrates, for doing your job. You see all the forests, especially back here, there's a beautiful forest behind the church, right? What happens to all those leaves and those logs when they fall down? Do they just pile up? How come we don't see just piles and piles of leaves and stacks of logs that have just fallen down? How come we don't see that just all the time?
Because they fall in different places.
Well, they do, but they could all fall down in one place, but if they didn't go away, they would all be piled up. How come they're not all still there? What happened to them? Where did they go after they died?
They roll down.
They did, and what happens to them?
They get made out of stuff.
Okay, sometimes you can make stuff out of trees and logs, but in nature, like if people aren't coming to take that tree away and make it into stuff or burn it for fire or anything like that, it usually decomposes. It gets rotten and squishy, and then it collapses into a pile of stuff like sawdust, right? How did it happen? How did that happen? The bugs eat them. How many of you guys ever heard of a termite? What do termites eat? Wood. Sometimes they eat the wood that our houses are made of, right? But they eat dead wood specifically, right? And the wood that's in your house is actually dead wood. That's why they like to eat it, right? But in a forest, things like termites and ants and beetles and roaches and all of those things, that's their job. They are the decomposers. The decomposers are, you guys know what a carnivore is? Is that a carnivore? Because what does he eat? Other animals, meat, right? Do you guys know what an herbivore is? That's an herbivore. What does it eat? Plants. Do you guys know what an omnivore is? What's an omnivore? What does it eat? Yeah, so are we omnivores? Yes. Yeah, because we eat meat and plants, right? But then there's another group of animals we often forget. They're called the detritivores, the decomposers. Detritus is usually nature's garbage, all the dead animals and plants. So the decomposers help to decompose all the dead stuff out there so it doesn't pile up. But do you know what it makes it into? Dirt. That's why our land here is so fertile, because all the little animals, like all of the little bugs, break down all the leaf litter, break down all the dead plants, and it makes it into fertile ground where new things can grow. That's also why they're so important. So because of the decomposers that help things to grow, do you think we like that, where we like to grow so much food here in the Midwest? Yeah. The other thing is they pollinate all of that food that we also like to eat, that we like to grow. But without them, and this is actually a big problem right now here in the Midwest, we don't have enough pollinators. So a lot of people actually, a lot of farmers have to rent bees. They literally bring in beehives to pollinate their gardens now, right? And why is that? Because unfortunately, we put chemicals and things on our plants to keep them safe from insects, but inadvertently we kill all the pollinators. So if we don't, I mean, you could plant all the plants you want, they could start to grow, but they would never produce any fruits and vegetables if we didn't have pollinators. And so that's the scary thing that's happening right now. That's why we're working so hard at the zoo to save things like rusty patch bumblebees, to save things like monarch butterflies, because we know that we depend on those animals to help us produce food. We as humans are completely dependent on those invertebrates, and we have to pay attention to that, or we won't have enough food to eat. So, do you think it's important for us to try to save the invertebrates? Yes. Should we pay attention to them as much as we do giraffes and snow leopards? Yes. Do giraffes and snow leopards, as beautiful as they are, do they actually help us survive? No, they don't. They're very beautiful to look at, and of course, I always will want to save them. But you know what we really should pay more attention to? Those bugs that literally feed our bellies. Not by eating the bugs, although you could totally do that, right? Yeah, they are so super important. So I hope that from today's Spineless Wonders program that you've learned a little bit more and maybe respect those animals a little bit more. And instead of going, you know, I saw a spider walking around the floor here earlier. I was going to pick him up and go put him outside, but I'm like, oh, that'll slow down the program. So maybe instead of just going, spider, right? Maybe you can just scoop him into a little cup, take him outside, let him go. Now, I'm not saying save every mosquito, because man, mosquitoes are terrible, but they are important too because they feed other animals, right? Like bats. Like our bats around here will eat one bat will eat 3,000 mosquitoes a night. I'm like, go bats! Woo! Right? So, but either way, everything has its place in nature. Nature is balance. And we have to remember, as people, we are actually part of nature too. And we have to find our balance because we've often put nature out of balance. So I hope that you guys come out to the zoo, check out what we've done, come see our beautiful baby rhino. I mean, he's a baby. You know, we say he's a baby, but he's 2.5 years old now. Of course, we do hope to bring a female in next year so that we can actually make more babies. But that's really to help their species, right? So come see the amazing things we're doing at the zoo. We've restored over 20 acres of pollinator habitat at the zoo. This year, we had the U.S. Fish and Wildlife come out and do surveys all summer long to determine that we do actually have established colonies of rusty patch bumblebees. We were the first site in the Quad Cities area to identify that we have rusty patch bumblebees. But because we started doing pollinator habitat restoration a few years ago, Illinois Forest Preserve has been doing it, Nahant Marsh has been doing it, lots of other places have been doing it. People have been planting pollinator pockets in their backyards, and we actually have many rusty patch bumblebees now. We are a hot spot in the Midwest for rusty patch bumblebees because if you build it, they will come. Right? So thank you guys so much for having me out. Please come out and see us at the zoo. The zoo closes after Halloween, like literally Halloween is the last day we're open this year, so October 31st. We will have Boo at the zoo this year, but still, you know, just still remember that, you know, masks might be necessary, but it will be outdoors, so that won't always be the case. But indoor buildings, you still have to wear them, so bring them to the zoo, and we hope to see you at the zoo. Thanks so much, everybody.